Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. I do a podcast. It's called It's Good to Talk, and it sure is good to talk. People know me because I produced this book for my friend Stoney McGurn. It's about his life story, and that's how it all started. It's on audio, and it's also on video, and you can get it on Amazon. My sponsors, Liffey Van Lines Moving Company here in New York City, and they've been around longer than Jeopardy, and you can't buy experience. So today, because some of my friends asked me to talk more about economics and marketing, because back in January last, I did some predictions, and I did predict that inflation would be coming down steadily and almost in half. At the time, it was 8%, and now it's almost only 4%. And I did predict the price of gasoline would come down as well. And I'll explain how I got into explaining all that. A little bit of background to myself. I was born in County Mayo in Ireland. I attended Coláiste Cumann, which is a high school close to me. My brother there was school principal, and he actually taught economics to me. We did some Latin and everything else. Classes at the time were Oscalia in my native Irish language, which was complicated enough if you're studying economics or mathematics especially. So I finished up there, and I went to Galway City to do further studies there, and that was in September 1978. I was there for 2 years doing business studies and business law. One of my teachers there, professors, was Michael D. Higgins, who is the president of Ireland today, and he taught me social studies, and he was interested. I moved on from there to go to Dublin, Dublin's fair city, where the girls are so pretty. I attended the College of Marketing and Design. While there, I got involved with the Marketing Institute of Ireland and passed their exams, and they swept me away in, I think it was October 81, to Harvard, the International Institute of Marketing, to do some brainstorming. It was like an advanced marketing intensive course, but it was more what they were doing, borrowing brains from people like myself. The big thing at the time was the mobile phones was kind of new, and they were getting ready to get them rolled out. And I'm big into new product design and new product development, and I have my own personal opinions. As my friends say, I have opinions on everything, but I do believe if you produce a new product, the rolling it out, you need to have it made price savvy, that the consumer will be interested in buying it. So even though it might have cost thousands and thousands and thousands to produce one unit, you have to look at what the consumer is willing to pay for it. The same concept I talked about when the City Bike was rolled out here in New York City. It was a new idea, I guess, for people like to rent a bike for an hour a day or whatever, but you have to make it cost effective for the product to be viable. I will come to basic marketing in a few moments, but I'm going to go back and explain inflation, because that was one of my friends who had lost some money, by the way, in crypto, and he was talking about getting advice from people. I said, who are you getting advice from? And he said, economists. I said, a lot of the people I get to see on regular TV are just commentators, and they bandy the word inflation around without understanding what inflation is. So let me explain to you what inflation is today, and most importantly, how it's calculated, and how two items in the shopping basket can affect the rate of inflation. So inflation is calculated by what's known as the CPI, Consumer Price Index. So I did an analogy for my friend. I won't go into detail on it, but basically it's a typical family going into their local supermarket. They load up the shopping cart with the basics: milk, orange juice, toilet paper, of course, essential, and all commodities, nappies if they're babies. And eggs was a big one at the time, okay? And we all know where eggs come from, especially me, because I owned a famous restaurant in Ireland called Mother Hubbard's, and I had to buy a lot of eggs, believe me, per week, per day. And hens are good because they lay one egg every day, but you need a lot of hens to lay a lot of eggs. Okay, so back to my friend who I'm trying to teach, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So I gave him that example, and if that shopping cart, let's say this year, costs $120 to load up, and he gets another tank of gas for 30, that's a total of 150. And go a year later, and the price of eggs come down dramatically. They drop from the hen's backside, and the price of gas comes down because there's less demand, And even though the Arabs are producing it, the supply and demand comes into the equation. So what has happened now with the inflation? Two items out of the shopping cart, the eggs and the gasoline, have come down. So that family are paying less for eggs and they're paying less for gasoline. Therefore, inflation came down in January at 8%, and today it's about 4%. So you're probably going to ask me a good question, and I agree with you, you should. Where is it going from here? Where do I see it going from here? Well, I see it going from here. Let's talk about the eggs first, the easy one for eggs, because the hens are back in action. A lot of them died off, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the egg, of course. So now the hens are back and they're laying in a happy, uniform way, and good for them. So the price of eggs has dropped right into your frying pan. Now, oil. The oil from the Saudis has dropped. They tried to drop the supply, but it didn't have an effect on this side of the world, or indeed in Europe, on the demand for oil or gas. A few things there. A mild winter helps a lot because there's less demand for oil. The more the automobiles, the cars, convert to electric cars, the less demand there will be for oil. So the good news is inflation is going to come down for this year, 2023, and 2024. We have to project a little bit forward. And inflation, therefore, will come down also. Now, if it's already at, close to 4%, it doesn't really have to come down a lot more. So let's give it a simple target of maybe 1% more. No big deal. Now, the Fed increasing the interest rates, okay, does have an effect on either curtailing how much consumers are spending and so on and so forth. So they're quickly describing fiscal policy and monetary policy. Monetary policy is where the central bank decides to increase interest rates, so your cost of borrowing is going to cost you more. Okay, we might come back to that later, but that's the basic premise of that. Fiscal policy is where taxes come into the game of, say, a sales tax. And you know that in New York, taxes are higher, in New Jersey, taxes are lower. So I want to move on to marketing, what I call marketing 101. And for those of you that marketing is a word that's kind of bandied around without people fully understanding what the whole concept of marketing is. You know, is it sales? A little bit. Is it something else? A little bit. So let's cut to the chase here and give you maybe a basic background to marketing. The big thing in marketing is what's known as the 4 Ps. So you have a business, and I want you to think along with me here from your own point of view. If you own a bar, a restaurant, or your own personal service or a product, or a moving service like Liffey, service and product will interchangeable word, okay? So marketing has what's known as the 4 Ps. The first P stands for price. The second P stands for product and promotion, which involves advertising and so on and forth, and place, which also refers to distribution or your location. So you basically, as the owner of your business or product, you have somewhat control over the 4 Ps, right? You can decide the price of your product. You can decide what your product is. You can decide the location. You can decide the distribution. You can decide the advertising. If you want to spend on newspaper advertising, television advertising, social media, that's totally up to you, okay? You have control over the 4 Ps. Now, that's all good and well. And by the way, you are the owner, okay? You're in control. That's good to know. I'll come back to that in a moment. If you're someone working as a 9-to-5 employee, I will make some comparisons, okay? So let's say of these 4 Ps, the price, the product, the place, and the promotion, which would you say, in your opinion, is the most important of the 4 Ps? And I've answered this question on television to an audience of over 1 million people, believe it or believe it not. And I didn't hesitate too long because I didn't want people to be thinking, oh, it's the price, of course, it's always the price. No. It's the product. So let's say you're working on a new product and you want to get it out to the market, and maybe it's a totally new invention or something you're working on. The rule number one is don't get it out until you have it perfected. If you're opening a new service, say you're opening a new bar or a new restaurant or whatever your service is, don't open the door until you are sure that everything about your product or service is exactly 100% perfected. In my situation, I had Mother Hubbard's restaurant in Ireland, and I made sure that everything was ready before I was going to open the door. I knew when I would open that business, there's no time for correcting along the way. You don't make it up as you go along. You fail very quickly. The public will not trust you if your product flops very quickly, and they will leave you. Not only will they leave you, they will talk about your product in a negative way. You want them talking in a positive way. So product is essentially the most important part of your 4 P's. Now, price, you have to decide yourself as to, number one, you want to be competitive against people that are selling a similar product. And your location is your location. You've decided that yourself, and hopefully your location is good as well and all that. Your promotion, there's a variety of ideas there. I had Tom Sanchez on here from United Print Group. We did a long session on a podcast here with United Print Group talking about promotional products and branding and items such as this. The pen, as we know from my last podcast, was invented in Zagreb in Croatia from my last interview with a filmmaker on my last podcast, but check him out too. So advertising, branding, and all that, you can decide the budget. You want to spend a little or you want to spend a lot. And of course, people will ask me, how do I know how much to spend? Well, maybe you don't know how much to spend, but you want to check out and see where your ROI, your return on your investment, is coming from. Okay? And as you get into your development of your product and service, you want to know where your customers are coming from. Okay? And before I go on to SWOT analysis, SWOT, SWOT analysis, I want to give you another word from the marketing terminology, and that's USP. Now, what is USP? Unique selling point, right? Now, if you're lucky enough to have a unique selling point, you have an advantage over your competitors because it is a unique selling point. In my case, at Mother Hubbard's in Ireland, my restaurant had a few unique selling points. One is I had my own garden close to the restaurant for growing vegetables and lettuce, cabbage, and herbs and parsley and things like that. So it was from the garden to the table. Customers could see this and they perceived as being a very healthy option that the vegetables are grown there and used here. Also, I was the first restaurant in Ireland to put in wheelchair accessibility for disabled people. At the time, it wasn't a planning requirement, so then it was a big deal for people in wheelchairs and for people with disabilities to have this feature in a restaurant on a stop on the road. Also, there was shower facilities provided for long distance drivers and travelers, and those were what we would call unique selling points. Not every restaurant in Ireland had the luxury to have its own garden, and indeed at the time, maybe they were built 10, 15, 20 years before me, and they had old toilets. And if you're in a wheelchair, the one thing you hate is steps or no access. And that maybe goes for anybody in general. So let me come back now to what I mentioned a little bit back there, SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is something that's worth doing, whether you're in totally new service or product or you're an existing business. Maybe like Liffey, maybe you've been around 50 years. But just because you've been around 50 years doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. Times change, things change, and customers change, okay? So let's look at strengths. Let's say if the crew at Liffey, the inside crew at Liffey, are teaming up and they say, okay, let's listen to John D. Healy because it's good to talk. And they have a little meeting for half an hour. Okay, lads, you'll get it out. And let's talk about what are your strengths, okay? Do you have a USP? What are your opportunities? And what are the threats, okay? So your strengths are, you've been established a long time. You have a qualified crew. You're professional in what you do. You have a good location, of course. Those are your strengths. Your opportunities are, of course, your trucks are on the road. People see your advertising because it's very visual. Okay, so that you got two things. Now, what are the threats? Well, there's competition out there. Okay, people are educated. Your customers, of course, they're going to move from, for the various reasons. I had Michael Moran on here. He's a real estate broker here in New York City, and he explained clearly the whole aspect of people moving from co-ops and condos to houses and all of that. But people do their research because they're spending hard-earned money, and they will compare one service against another service, whether it's a moving service or a restaurant dining out for a meal, and they want to get the best value for their money. Now, you have to be able to sell good if you have the USP. If your product is better than someone else's product, okay, maybe you're going to get away with being able to charge a higher price than the Johnny-come-latelys, okay? Or the cowboys in the moving world, as I call them, or Dumb and Dumber, as some of them are. And if you see them without on their trucks, they have no uniforms, and the crew are carrying knapsacks on their back. Just watch out, customers. If you're deciding to pick a moving company, at least go professional and check out their reviews, see how long they've been in business, see if they're professional. And if you're just walking down the street, like I do sometimes, and I see a truck belonging to a competitor, and if I see that crew, they're not in their uniforms, the moving pads are thrown around on the street, they look very, very not professional, I would not recommend that moving company to anybody, okay? So do your homework when it comes to a moving service. Do your homework when it comes to any service. Check out the reviews, see what the quality is, and see where the unique selling point that company has. And check the reviews, okay? So let me see where I'm going from here. I covered the inflation. There will be no downturn. Inflation is going to be getting less and less. We will not be hitting a recession. There was no recession. There will be no recession if things stay consistent. Now, what can go wrong in your product or service in the outside world? The 4 Ps, the price, the product, the place, the promotion, you have control on that. Now, what is it that you don't have control on, apart from the ones that I mentioned? Well, you don't have control over something the government might do, like let's say taxes go up. If taxes go up, like say sales tax, okay, now you have to add that to your product, okay? That's something you have no control over. You have no control over unforeseen circumstances, or as in the insurance world they say, an act of God, okay? So let's hope God doesn't strike you down. I did have Christopher Roselli on here, and that's an important podcast for you to go back over and learn all the aspects of why it's necessary to buy insurance, why it's necessary to have proper insurance. Don't go cheap on your insurance. Make sure you're insured for everything you should be insured for. And always think, sometimes it's not your space here that's all fine. What about if the guy above you has a plumber who's not qualified and it starts raining down on you? You got to shut your business down. That's not good. So you need to be covered for loss of business if something goes wrong, repairs if there's damage in your place, and everything else. I would refer you to go back to Christopher Roselli and make sure you check out that. Who else do you need as you operate your business? Well, you should have a very good, decent, qualified accountant, okay? And I can recommend Hell's Kitchen Tax Company, Jay Shaw. We'll put his number up for you there in a moment. And someone that's professional again and keeps you in line. You don't want to be losing sleep over the IRS, wondering if you owe them or you don't owe them. Keep your books in order. And I would also add to that, if you are a bar or a restaurant, maybe you should have somebody qualified to do a monthly audit. What we call in the trade in Ireland was like stock control. Because if there's too much spillage or waste, it's cutting into your GP, your gross profit. And you should know what your gross profit is, and therefore you should know what your net profit is. Your overheads are going to be your staff wages, expenses like Con Edison, electricity, and everything else that goes with it, even cleaning supplies, okay? So those are things that you should take into account. Even if you're in business, not too late. If you're starting a new business, definitely consider what's going to be those things that's going to be an expense outside of what you might have thought. Now, little banking advice here. So you have to go to the bank and you have to get a mortgage for your new business. And you will need to do a business plan, of course. And if you don't know how to do a business plan, get somebody qualified to help you do a business plan. But do a business plan, be realistic with your business plan, okay? Market research is important, okay? I'll mention, say, Elite Healers here. They're located, a good location on Park Avenue, 445 Park Avenue on 56th Street. Now, if Adam Cardona, the owner, was to do market research as of now to see where he should see himself in 5 years from now, his market research would be based on what's happening around him within a 5-block radius, or as we say some places, the zip code. So 5 blocks or a zip code. Well, we can see from that area down there, there's a lot of high rises going up, which means that's going to be a lot of new potential and a lot of new clients moving into the area. So I would refer back to Michael Moran again there, New York real estate broker, to see those units. Try and get a demographic of the type of people moving in. What ages are they? What are their income? What's their professionalism? Are they people that's going to be looking for, say, a sports massage or a medical massage or a leisurely massage? That means they would have discretionary income that they can afford beyond the weekly average bills, okay? But that's just research, and research is important. Now, getting back, advertising, well, the best advertising comes usually from referrals. If people are going to talk about your business, like your restaurant, your moving service, or your massage service, the referral is strong because that person is putting their neck on the line to say, this product is good, this restaurant is good, that company is good, and that's stronger than advertising, okay? Advertising can be like a flash, and you say yes and hit and miss. Now, in some cases, like the restaurant business, that's repeat business, more or less repeat business. The Adams business is somewhat repeat business as well. Moving business, people only move maybe once every 4 or 5 years. So you got to be a bit more sharper that you get your customer competitively and, professionally, and make sure that they in turn give you the referral so you have the unique selling point over the other competitors that are out there. Okay, so let me see if I left anything out. I did say no recession. I did say inflation is coming down. I did talk about the price, product, place, and promotion. And I think that's all I have to talk to you about today, and the SWOT analysis. So that's all I have to say to you today. I'm going to finish up with leaving you with some music from my friend Gerri and PJ Clark's. Gerri's from Galway, and he was a big grower for Galway in Ireland, and he passed on some Irish music and atmosphere from Galway City, where I was a student once upon a time. And I do notice some of the bars I drank in Galway, and they're still going strong. The King's Head and the Cellar, and many's a drink I had there, and many's good fun I had there. So for now, I'm going to say, Slán Abhaile, Slán Gafol. If you like the podcast, subscribe. And if you like it more, tell your friends about it, because after all, it's good to talk. Don't forget to buy the book on Amazon before it's going to be banned. It has some content that's adult, and books are being banned. And that's another example of something I have no control over. If the government or whoever the authorities decide to ban the book, then I cannot sell a book, can I? So you got to watch the 4 Ps, and don't forget, do SWOT, SWOT analysis. In the meantime, stay positive with your business, be confident, and be productive. And I wish you the rest of the year, going into the end of the year and going into next year, do projections, keep on top of your game, and make sure good accountant, good insurance broker. Stay healthy as well. You can't afford to take time off. If you're an employee, you can call in sick on Monday. If you own your business, you don't call in sick on Monday. So from John D. Healy here, I'm going to say Slán Abhaile, Slán Go Fóill, Tug a Buggy, Slán Lad.